Today we're discussing the aftermath and everything that has happened in the 1 year since the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Roe versus Wade.
Roe v. Wade.
Roe versus Wade.
Roe versus Wade. Tens of millions of women across the US do not have their right to an abortion guaranteed by the Constitution.
As all of you know, it has been a little over 1 year now since the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe v. Wade in a decision that has now been referred to as dobbs. In brief, and without going into the details, I have a whole 30-minute video on this if you want to watch it. Basically, what Roe v. Wade did was protect your right to have access to an abortion in your state up to a particular gestational age. That gestational age has varied a couple of times across the length of time that Roe v. Wade had been in place since 1973. But in general, most people should have had access to abortion. Now, that is a theoretical in and of itself. I will say that having done all of my training and education in Texas, most of my patients did not have easy access to termination even when Roe v. Wade was in place because of a lot of the loophole legislation. Roe v. Wade basically kept the government from being able to prevent you from accessing or punish you for accessing abortion, but it didn't prevent civil lawsuits from coming from that. So that's what Texas was able to do in 2021. And obviously we know pretty soon after that, the overturn of Roe v. Wade made it possible for them to do it from a just government standpoint in general. So if you're even remotely familiar with my channel, then you will know how I feel about this. But if you're not, I'll let you see a clip here just of part of that video. How you feel about abortion and whether you would have one is really irrelevant to this discussion because we can't risk other people's lives and health and even mental health and happiness because of something that we believe is morally or religiously correct, especially when it is very clear that many of these things fall into a gray area. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all of these discussions about them, right? Basically, that was me just talking about how I feel about this and the fact that you really don't need to, have a personal opinion about abortion to believe that overturning Roe v. Wade would be dangerous, and that this is a matter of looking at overall interference of government in people's ability to access healthcare that they need, and that it shouldn't be something that is based on your personal opinions on the topic. When it comes to abortion rights, all states have made changes now since this has gone into place. Some of those changes have been in really Republican states or right-leaning states where they have done things like continue to pass more restrictive laws, my home state of Texas included. Some of them have been in more liberal states or left-leaning states like California, where they have made a push to amend their state constitutions to protect the right to access abortion, which is an attempt to prevent even smaller government from being able to make changes in their district or county or however it's set up where they are at. Although there is some concern that even those small governments could actually start doing things like that. If you look at this map by Time Magazine, and the data in this map is coming from Guttmacher Institute, which is a very reliable source for information on topics like abortion. When this video is up on YouTube, I'll put all of these resources linked in the video. So if I go over anything in the stream today and you're like, I don't know if I trust that, I'll put them where you can find them so that you can decide for yourself. Feel free to look up anything I ever say. As you can see on here, they've got all of the different states kind of color-coded, and yellow is where abortion is still legal, and orange is where the ban was attempted to be passed but is blocked by their court. So they tried to put in a ban, but it didn't work. And then in red states, abortion is illegal. And that is over half of states. 26 states have either red or orange bans. And the variation between those states is huge as far as what gestational age we're talking about with regards to what is legal and not legal. 6 weeks is pretty common, although in some places it's completely blocked totally. In some places it's 12 to 20 weeks. I think that it doesn't matter. The point is that you can live in one state and not have access, and the next state you can. Now, a common thing that people would say in the other video is it doesn't matter. People from Texas, they can just go to Arkansas or go to Colorado. In theory, yeah, I guess that's true, but you have to remember who this affects, right? You're never going to have a wealthy white politician's family member who can't access abortion. Even if it was illegal everywhere in the US, these people would be able to go other places in the world to get access. Saying that you should still have access because you're in a place that's in the middle of Texas, but you can go to another state is wild. One, it is a huge drain on the healthcare system of the place that has kept healthcare legal. Two, if you're in a situation where it is dangerous to your health to be pregnant, it's probably going to be dangerous to your health to travel. And three, you are more likely to have people in lower socioeconomic statuses who are affected by this because they can't take time off work to travel. They don't have the money to travel. That's just a silly way of saying that, yeah, you don't have access, but I'm going to pretend that you do. The bans vary a bunch based on various factors, including gestational age, which type of medical provider can perform the abortion, whether Medicaid funds cover abortions, whether private insurance is required to cover abortions or not, if parents have to be notified in the case of a minor seeking an abortion, and whether there's a waiting period. You see in these states, even in the more right-leaning states like Kansas, when people who are in the state had the opportunity to vote specifically on the topic of abortion, you see things that are more in line with what the general public believes, which is that abortion should not be illegal across the board. This is a lie that the extreme conservatives have told people that everybody, even a lot of left-leaning people, seem to believe that most people think abortion should be illegal, and that's why it now is not federally protected by the government. That's a lie. Abortion rights, or keeping abortion legal, or not criminalizing abortion, has never been a majority vote in the U.S. It has always been the case that a majority of U.S. residing people who have the ability to vote believe that abortion should still be legal. So don't believe lies like that. In 2022, abortion rights were on the ballot in 6 states. California, Michigan, and Vermont, voters all voted to amend their state constitutions to protect abortion rights. So this is what we were talking about earlier. So 3 states amended their constitution to make sure that if the federal government tried to put in a complete ban, they would at least have some pushback there to make it go back to the Supreme Court. So that's all of these things are really setting us up for what we do next. And before Roe v. Wade was overturned, I would have said to you, like, I don't think that this will ever happen. I just can't see it happening. And I don't know why I had rose-colored glasses on, but I did. I just could not fathom that actually happening, even with the wild makeup of the Supreme Court that we ended up with. And then it happened. And now I think anything can happen. You are seeing people in these more left-leaning states set up a system where if a federal ban attempts to go into place, the state can bring a federal versus state lawsuit to the Supreme Court to try to get that overturned. Well, what's going to happen with that, right? I can't imagine that the current makeup of the Supreme Court would vote in favor of the state. Kentucky and Kansas rejected attempts to amend their state constitutions to say that there is no inherent right to abortion. Earlier I was talking about Kansas, and I know that they voted in favor of not making it illegal. So I'm not sure where this falls into that, but it seems like they didn't want their state constitution amended. Voters in Montana rejected the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, rejected in Montana. This law would require medical care to be provided to infants born alive after induced labor, C-section, attempted abortion, or other method. Okay, all right. This is a propaganda tool as well to say that there are situations where someone goes in to try and have an abortion and oopsie, we messed up and we have now a viable baby born who is just going to be let die. That does not happen. This is wild, okay? You may find a situation where someone has described that happening, and first off, I would question exactly the transparency of what they're sharing. But also, only 1.5% of terminations happen after 20 weeks. Viability is like 23 weeks. There are situations of survival less than that, but that is pretty rare. It's a gray area, all right? I get that. But any abortion happening after 20 weeks, first off, is going to be rare. Second, many of them, especially in the ones who are born alive, are going to be having abortions for lethal anomalies and be induced. This is still considered an abortion. It is something that in Texas was even very hard for me to have done for my patients who had babies who had been diagnosed with lethal anomalies that would mean that they don't get to live a life after they're born. If they survive up to the time of birth, that they will die during the process of or soon after. This law, and the reason that I think this is a dangerous thing to put into place, especially because it's written in a way that makes people think they're doing something really good because of the way that it's written. The danger is that then you are required to provide care to babies who are born alive. You don't give these families the opportunity. So let's take Anencephaly, for example. Anencephaly is a situation where a baby develops with no brain, but it still has a brainstem. The brainstem is required for your autonomic function, breathing, and things like that. So they can live for a while, and if put on a life support machine, they can live indefinitely, but they don't have a brain. So not only do they not have brain function, they don't have a physical brain or a covering on their head. That doesn't make that any less important to a family who would like to deliver and hold and care for their baby at whatever gestational age they choose. That is still a valid choice and something that people should have the opportunity to do if that's what they want. But forcing doctors to take that baby who could be born alive and provide life-saving care not only prolongs a, I think, inhumane torture process for these babies, but it takes it away from the family, even if the family doesn't want that to happen. So that is a crazy thing to do. And the situations where a botched abortion happens, like that's not something that happens with abortion providers who are trained with what they're doing. A lot of times it's impossible for that to happen. These people who write these laws know what they're doing, and they're wording them in a way that the population, when they vote on it, thinks they're doing something good or that helps people, but actually in the process of this, who is always harmed the most, in my opinion, especially when we're talking what they say is late-term abortion, which is the 1.5% of abortions that happen after 20 weeks, is that they end up having these situations where they are extremely harmful to very wanted pregnancies, families who are grieving and can't get the care they need. The amount of abortions that happen from 20 to 24 weeks is extremely low. After 24 weeks is exceptionally low. Like at that point, most of the time you would just be induced and deliver. There are exceptions to that rule, which is why this shouldn't be legislated. Medicine is complex. I couldn't even begin to describe to you the breadth of things that could happen. I have dedicated my entire life to learning about doing and taking care of this, but I also grew up in an extremely pro-life rural Texas area, and I have come to the positions that I have now after working in this field and seeing how drastically horrible things can go in pregnancy. I value everyone in the situation of me taking care of them, and I don't want anyone to see me as a doctor if they don't want to. I'm busy enough, that's fine. But to imply that because I don't think criminalizing abortion is the appropriate way to go about this means I don't care about the babies that my patients are carrying, that is an outrageous thing to say. Nothing is black and white in this field. It is absolutely the antithesis of that. And actually why I was so drawn to this field, even the ethical grayness of a lot of things in this field, like IVF and new technologies and sex selection and termination. These are all things that drew me to this field because I like nuance and discussion and science and all of that. But when you make it a government issue, you lose all of that. There are more proposals that are coming to ballots this year and next year that we already know about. And it feels a bit overwhelming and at times feels like, okay, like you got what you want. You've been trying for this since the Reagan administration. So great. Congratulations. You've taken away access to abortion, a very needed procedure for many people in the US, which, by the way, when you do that, you only increase the amount of people who seek late-term abortions, which again, that is not a real thing, but later terminations happen when people can't access early terminations. So what could have just been take a pill, have an induced miscarriage, is now have a procedure or eventually have a, very extensive procedure. So these laws not only hurt the health of people, they increase the later term terminations that supposedly these people think that they are trying to get rid of. I mentioned in another video, if you watch the Mifpriston video, that they're not going to stop at just making it okay for states to make abortion illegal. Now we're going to move into attempting to ban various things, and one of those has been Mifpriston. I have a whole video about this. We don't know the full outcome of that yet. I would like to say that I don't think that it will be banned, but I said that about overturning Roe v. Wade, and here we are. There are many attempts in place at the moment to try to reduce the ability of people who live in states where abortion is illegal to keep them from being able to cross state lines and access abortion or get abortion pills in the mail, which, by the way, I do need to say, it is legal in every state currently to receive abortion pills in the mail. So you can still access early abortion pill termination in every state. Mayday Health is a great place to go for that. Dr. Jennifer Lincoln is the physician behind that, and she is doing excellent work. So check them out if you need it. I will link them in the description box below. Some prominent members of the anti-choice movement realize that they should be trying to provide support to the thousands of babies now who will be born against the will of the person carrying them. And they have started something called Building a Post-Roe Future. And they put out a statement that says, now, maybe we should focus on, creating some social safety nets, which, yeah, I guess they can say that all they would like, but it's not going to happen. The people that vote for this are never going to actually vote for social safety nets. That is antithetical to the position of the people in that side of the voting pool. This isn't something that conservatives support. So it doesn't make any sense to me that they would start caring about that now. So this is a front. This is like, yeah, we do pretend that we care about this, but it's not going to actually make any tangible change or provide any actual support. They are doing this now that, we're a year out. Babies who are already born because of this to families who can't support them are struggling with no help, and we have given them nothing to make sure that they can safely take care of their baby. We know that historically around the world, banning abortion is associated with increases in the rate of infanticide and also of, attempts for self-abortion, and access is limited and you end up having people with botched and deadly abortions. This is one from the BBC, and this journalist is interviewing a 24-year-old president of the Southwest Florida Young Republicans and a doctor at an anti-abortion clinic. And I haven't watched this. It's a bit long, so we'll just watch a couple of clips that they've pulled for me to
What
watch.
would you say to people who think Governor DeSantis is just trying to out-Trump Trump? He wants to be the next president, and he doesn't really care about the people in Florida.
I would say that's completely false. He's always very concerned about the constituents. His number one thing is supporting families and ensuring that children are protected and safe in this state.
24-year-old Olivia is against abortion and saw the overturning of Roe as a positive moment for local democracy.
I never really felt that the federal government should have a say in reproductive rights. And so when you bring it back to the state level, you're bringing it back into the hands of the people. I think with abortion, we kind of lose that humanity. We kind of try to erase it in a sense. Whereas if you just allow those mothers to carry to term and give birth,
Okay, this is very interesting, right? What did she just say? If you allow these mothers to carry to term and give birth, that is not what we're talking about. Forced abortion is just as terrible as forced birth. Nobody is disallowing people from carrying to term and giving birth. These things, these Freudian slips, really make it clear what is going on and that this is a control issue. I also think it's just wild to hear, their Governor DeSantis is in the business of making sure that children are safe. I'm sorry, what? That is not the truth. That is not the case. What happens when abortion is illegal? Infanticide goes up. We know from the Turnaway study that people who seek abortion and are denied access to that, their other children suffer financially, emotionally, and socioeconomically, as well as physically moving forward after that next baby is born. We know that they have a higher chance of parents who stay in abusive relationships. We know that there is a higher chance of having little to no bonding with the baby from the parent. All of the things that come along with denying access to abortion put children at increased risk. And that's without even looking at the overall viewpoint of people who make these decisions, right? So you don't have to look very far to find instances of the people who stand for criminalizing abortion also doing things that hurt children. And that's before we even look at the clear things like paid parental leave, like social safety nets, giving enough funding to people that they don't have to have both parents working outside the home if they don't want to. This isn't the things that people on that side vote for. The people on that side take away reproductive rights. They take away access to education. They put forth laws that do the opposite of protecting children.
Dr. Trandon believes elective abortions physically and mentally harm women. But the broad medical consensus contradicts her, such as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which states abortions are a safe medical intervention with fewer risks than childbirth. So what do you think about the argument that ultimately you are entitled to believe what you want, but that shouldn't negate a woman's right to have an abortion if she feels that's what she needs?
I would say there's 2 patients for every woman who is pregnant. It's the woman and the baby. They can continue that pregnancy, which is protective for them emotionally. And
this is just bull, right? Okay, all obstetricians know they have 2 patients. Nobody is confused about that. We all do this job. And saying that carrying a pregnancy protects them emotionally is wild if you actually know the data, because it's quite the opposite, particularly in people who don't want to carry a pregnancy.
Protective for them emotionally and physically, and offer that child to another family who is in need.
Offer it to another family who is in need. Okay, let's talk about that. You can just adopt the baby out. My sister is a foster parent, and being a foster parent is not an alternative to pregnancy, okay? Putting a baby in a foster or adoptive family is not an alternative to pregnancy. It is an alternative to parenting. So even before we get into okay, there's so many kids in the foster system, true. Foster system sucks, true. It can be really horrible on everybody involved, true. There are some really great foster parents. My sister, much included in that. We don't even have to talk about that though, because adoption and fostering is an alternative to parenting, not pregnancy. Abortion is an alternative to pregnancy. Forceful surrogacy, yes, exactly. I am not required to use my body to grow a baby for you. If you can't have a baby, I'm really sorry. That sucks. I have been in a position where I had infertility and I could not get pregnant. And eventually, obviously, I was able to do that with the help of modern medicine and get pregnant with my twins. And then other babies after that. And I feel super lucky for that, but never once would I imagine telling someone, well, I can't have a baby, so you should have to carry it for me. That's wild. Now Karen has moved on to us discussing healthcare professionals and how these bans have affected healthcare professionals. After all of this happened, you have seen a lot of outspokenness in the medical field. A small percentage of that has been from people who agree with these bans, and a vast majority has been from people who think criminalizing abortion is harmful to the health of everybody, because we, read the data. And it also is making it harder for people who are in medical fields to decide where they want to go to training, if they will get good training. In Texas, you already did not get complete training. I cannot do D&E procedures. That's not uncommon, especially for people who train in Texas. When I left the US to come to Aotearoa, New Zealand, it was not because of this, but this is making it very hard for me to go back. And I can assure you of one thing, it won't be to Texas, because it is not something that I feel like I want to be in a position where I either have to choose between doing something which is illegal or leaving my patient out to dry in a potentially dangerous situation for them. There was a great graph from Axios about medical school graduates and where they apply for residency. And we have already seen a drop in people applying for residency in states where abortion is banned. You can see here, OB-GYN programs and all specialties in states where abortion is banned has dropped a significant portion. A 10% drop in applications to a residency program is massive. That means that you're getting less competitive applicants in places where abortion's banned, which means you get less competitive doctors and overall lowers the depth and breadth of the care you can access, but also the diversity of the people who are providing that care for you. Not only are we setting them up for worse shortages, the states that ban abortion are also all the states with the highest rates of maternal and neonatal mortality rates and morbidity rates. They are also the states where abortion is not the only thing people have trouble accessing. They have trouble accessing healthcare in general. Okay, so what you're going to see in the next 10 to 15 years, and we've already seen it come through with this data I just showed from Axios, is that over the next 10 years, if something doesn't change, the care in those states where abortion has been made illegal is not only going to become worse because there's less people there and because they can't access abortion there, you're going to see worsening maternal and neonatal outcomes. That is not up for debate. It will happen. You're also going to see a continued shrinkage of ability to access this very needed care, particularly in the frame of obstetrics and gynecology. Okay, so this is very problematic now, but it's going to be way more problematic as we move forward. I'll put some links in the description box below, and I will include this one that is from The Guardian, of a quote from an OB-GYN who says, "It's really hard to plan your life when the judge's orders come in 14-day increments." You can see how terrifying that would be as a physician who's both trying to keep their license and not go to jail and also take very good care of their patients. It's exhausting. It is morally injurious to us, and it's just honestly unacceptable. Who's actually getting the worst deal of all in all of this? I mean, let's not forget that the people who live in these states are the ones that are feeling this, that are affected by this, and not the people who are adjacent to those voting it in. Do not be fooled. Conservative people have abortions. It is just as common in people who are conservative as people who are not. And these people also need abortions, and they will have them if they are adjacent to the people who are making these laws, because those are not the people who will ever have trouble accessing termination. There's been some cases where people in Texas have brought forth lawsuits to try to fight against this, people who've had bad outcomes or who have had wanted pregnancies that needed to be terminated because they didn't want to carry them to term for health reasons, for lethal anomalies, for things like that. I mean, you can find examples all over the place. My closing thoughts on the abortion topic here and the aftermath of Roe v. Wade is this is only going to get worse. And we don't fight this on Twitter and in our echo chamber complaining about it. We fight this by bringing reliable and calmly given information to the people around us, by teaching through personal examples and making things click from a standpoint that the person you're talking to can get on board with. Okay, so you don't make a difference in this by having a knockdown, drag out Facebook fight with your crazy uncle. We have to be able to have real life discussions about this. We have to be able to point to things that these laws make difficult or impossible and how they harm everybody, not just people seeking elective termination. We have to be able to talk about this with friends and family, and we have to stop making the word abortion a dirty word. It is a word that we have to be able to say and talk about. So I often feel despondent, like there's nothing we can do, but we have to keep trying because this is just going to keep getting worse. And they're going to come for birth control. We need to be advocating at this point to write protection for contraceptive into the federal constitution, and if not there, at least into each state constitution. When they say that you don't need that, that's crazy, you're delusional, nobody's going to make accessing contraception illegal. You just refer them back to what has already happened that we thought would never happen, and be pushing for people who are running on the idea of protecting things we currently have so they can't be taken away. That means that while, yes, the presidential elections are really important, it's also really important to get involved in your state and local elections, because that is a place where you can make a difference. You need to make sure you're voting for people who are pushing to put policies in place that protect the rights we have so that they can't be taken, even though it's not a majority vote by the Supreme Court. Vote in the primaries. I don't know how important that will be this year at this rate for the presidential election, but yes, always do, and always make sure that you're not skipping the smaller votes in that. The judges, I cannot stress enough how important this is. The judges in these districts are how the Mif-Pristone case happened. That is how a lot of stuff going on in Florida is happening. you have to make sure you're voting for judges, mayors, local city officials, government officials, because not only is that who impacts your day-to-day life, but they also have a direct line to make things impact us on a bigger scale.